Welcome back to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. My name is Derek Brown. On today's video, we are going to talk about 10 players that are going to bring the pain in 2024. 10 players you are going to regret drafting this fantasy football season. But before we get to those 10 players, if you want a chance to win a signed Joe Burrow helmet for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you got to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. We will be announcing the winner right here on the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Let's talk about these 10 players. Okay, first player up we got to talk about here, Cole Kmet. And really this comes down to, what did we see out of the preseason? The usage for Cole Kmet was absolutely frightening. Look at him splitting snaps with Gerald Everett. How much is he going to run routes? How much is he going to be a part of this offense? If he doesn't have an 80, 90% route per dropback rate, as well as his standing in this target pecking order isn't higher than what? Third, fourth, maybe fifth? If all these things don't happen and he's not a prime integral part of this passing attack, he is going to massively disappoint people in fantasy. No, I don't want to be drafting a tight end that will not eclipse a 70% route per dropback rate. You have to, we also talk about volume is king in fantasy. You got to run routes to catch passes, to get targets, and to score fantasy points. Stay away from Cole Kmet. All right, the number 9 player on this list, Keon Coleman. Yes, I understand Pat Fitzmaurice's ears are burning somewhere. Look, I know that he's not going to like this take, but I've got to bring this to the masses here. Keon Coleman is a player that I'm going to be staying away from because, look, if you go back to his status as a prospect and we look at what he did in the college, there's not a lot to love here, people. We're talking about a player that over his final 2 seasons in college was never higher than 72nd in yards per route run, receiving grade, or yak per reception. So, and we're hearing camp reports that he's struggling to separate versus starting cornerbacks. So if you can't separate, you're not going to get targets. If you don't have efficiency and a sparkling prospect profile, I already had concerns about it. So why are we going to draft Keon Coleman when he could be the 3rd or 4th option in this passing attack? We have other talented players here, and I know that Curtis Samuel is not 100% right now, but as soon as he comes back, he's going to challenge Dalton Kincaid for the team leading targets. You also have Khalil Shakir, who is uber productive after he was a starter in this offense. Keon Coleman, where he's going in drafts, is a must avoid. All right, the number 8 player on this list, and this really shouldn't surprise anybody, I don't want the RB2 in Dallas. I do not want to draft old man Ezekiel Elliott. And yes, I get it. We've had previous seasons in fantasy where Ezekiel Elliott has been awesome. That time has passed, people. We need to get with the program, and if you're going to take any running back from the Dallas Cowboys, it has to be Rico Dowdle. He's the easiest, most talented player on this roster from the running back position. Ezekiel Elliott last year, just to be kind and rewind and remind people what last year looked like. Amongst 49 qualifying running backs, he was 45th in missed tackles forced per attempt, 43rd in yards after contact per attempt. I know everybody believes that Jerry Jones is going to wave some magic wand and force Mike McCarthy to give Zeke not only volume, but touches in the red zone. Talent dictates playing time, not just veteran status. I do not want to draft Ezekiel Elliott. I will draft Rico Dowdle as much as possible. All right, staying with the boring veteran train here. Gus Edwards, next guy up here. I do not want to draft him on any of my teams. And if you draft him, you are going to be very, very sorry for it. Last year, he was the RB32 in fantasy. I understand that. But that was on the strength of 13 total touchdowns, people. 4th most amongst running backs. Is he going to catch passes? No. 2.8% target share last year, so he doesn't have that out. Is he efficient with the touches that he gets? No again. That time has passed for Gus Edwards. He was 51st in juke rate last year, 45th in yards created per touch, You have other talented backs in this backfield. Yes, we could take shots on J.K. Dobbins and the health of him coming off of Achilles injuries and stuff. We could also take shots on Kamani Vidal. Yes, I'm not worried about some of the stuff we heard earlier this offseason about, oh, maybe he's cut. They're not cutting Kamani Vidal. I'm still wanting to take shots on what I consider to be the most talented player in that backfield if I'm going to. And sadly, that is not Gus Edwards. All right, to number 6 on this list, Jeudy. I'm just not falling for it, people. I'm not falling for it. If you want to draft him, so be it. But I've seen enough out of Jeudy over multiple seasons, too many seasons, to invest in him this year when, what are we excited about for the Cleveland Browns offense? Running back's kind of a mess. Deshaun Watson, probably still a mess at quarterback. He was arguably and objectively bad last year. Does that improve this year? Maybe, but again, just a projection. We'll have to see on that. Jeudy, I can tell you, has not been good at football the last few seasons. Last year, amongst 81 qualifying wide receivers, 42nd in yards per route run, 46th in receiving yards per game. Stats we look to that are highly correlative to fantasy scoring, as well as being 64th in first downs per route run. He has only eclipsed 10 fantasy points per game in one season of his NFL career. If you want to bet that the breakout comes this year and he's just crushing it, so be it, but you're going to end up in pain. All right, everyone, before we break into the top 5 of this list, do you remember when you first started playing fantasy football? It was fun, right? Do you ever feel like now when you're going through drafts, like you're studying for a math test? This year, it is time to reclaim that same enjoyment that you had all those previous years with the Draft Assistant. Draft Assistant simplifies the entire draft process, making it the easy way to dominate your fantasy drafts. It connects to your draft, keeps track of everything that's going on, and tells you who the best pick is when you're on the clock. All you have to focus on is the excitement of making those perfect picks. So this season, work less and win more with the Draft Assistant at fantasypros.com/draftwizard or on the Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app. Download it today. All right, breaking into this top 5 of players that you will regret drafting in fantasy football this season, Josh Jacobs has to make this list. I know everybody's high on him going to a better offense and what he could do in Green Bay. I'm not buying it, people. We've seen so many seasons of high volume, crazy usage, ruin running backs, and I'm worried that's the case for Josh Jacobs. He was objectively bad last year. Last season, he had the 12th highest stuff rate. He ranked outside the top 35 running backs in missed tackles forced per attempt and yards after contact per attempt. The juice, sadly, could be gone. For Josh Jacobs, nah, I'm not drafting him. If anything, I'll take the injury discount from Marshawn Lloyd, or I'm going to avoid this backfield. All right, so number 4 on the list, Rachaad White. Look, I mean, there's a theme here. I don't like inefficient running backs that we're playing off of. We just want volume, and volume is king. I understand that. But volume also follows talent. And I worry that Rachaad White's talent is a little bit overrated. Yes, he was the RB10 in fantasy last year. Yes, he was 4th in snap share, and he was top 10 in opportunity share and weighted opportunities. That's all great. But who is he competing against? Chase Edmonds? Sean Tucker? Not worried about either one of those guys. If Bucky Irving can cement himself as being, and what we've seen out of the preseason, looks pretty talented to me. I know that the testing wasn't great, but we're going to pass that, people. I care about what happens on the football field, and Bucky Irving played really good in the preseason. What if he cuts into Rachaad White's volume? What if that happens? And then we're left hoping, wanting Rachaad White to be an efficient player and to make the most out of every touch that he gets. Do you think that happens in 2024 for a player that last year ranked 42nd in missed tackles forced per attempt, was 40th in explosive run rate, and 45th in yards after contact per attempt? I don't think so. So the volume's not there for Rachaad White to be gobbling up volume at a top 10, top 8 clip. Amongst running backs, he's going to disappoint in fantasy. Stay away immediately. Do not draft him. Yes, I know. We got a theme going here. Inefficient running backs, gobbling volume. If the volume goes away, we're not too happy. That leads me to my 3rd player on this list, and that's Alvin Kamara. Yes, I understand Kendre Miller cannot seemingly stay healthy. That's a worry. Okay, fine. Maybe Kamara pays off. But I don't want to take that swing. I don't want to take that stab at this backfield. Not for a player in Alvin Kamara. Again, similar case to Rachaad White. He was top 10 in opportunity share, weighted opportunities, red zone touches last year. If he doesn't play that every down, bell cow workload, and I'm not telling you that he's bad in the passing game. Far from it. I think he's still going to be the preferred passing down back for the Saints this year. Maybe that carries the mail for him this season. But what if he gets some of his early down work taken away? What if that happens? And then we're talking about, well, Kamara just has to live off of all the pass game work, and maybe he loses some of the red zone work. Then he's going to disappoint for fantasy gamers in 2024. He was outside, again, another player, another running back, outside the top 35 running backs in yards per touch, breakaway run rate, and missed tackles forced per attempt. Sadly, I've loved Alvin Kamara in previous seasons. He's been a league winner. Just don't see it this year. I'm going to avoid him. All right, let's get off the running back train. Let's get off of these veteran running backs that we're staying away from. Let's move over to wide receivers here, and I'm going to go with a young player that everybody's super excited about, and I think there's worries here, and I think you will regret drafting him this season. And sadly, that's Jayden Reed. Last year, Jayden Reed was amazing. We all know this. He was wide receiver 26 in fantasy points per game, but his profile last year does come with some holes. There are some worries here for usage. What do we want out of our wide receivers? We want efficiency. Okay, we want talent. Okay, Jayden Reed has both of those. We also need routes, people, because you can't score fantasy points if you're not getting targets because you're not on the field. Yes, touchdowns were amazing for him. He scored the 5th most touchdowns amongst wide receivers. Touchdowns are also extremely fluky. And if those go away, does Jayden Reed have the play volume to compensate? Is that going to happen? For a Green Bay offense that we know is going to run a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 21 personnel, and for their slot wide receiver, that's concerning. And we saw that play out for Jayden Reed last year. Yes, I know the fantasy points were there, but a lot of that was touchdowns. A lot of that was big plays. Some of that was also the rushing usage. I don't want to depend on that either. For a player with Jayden Reed that played only 70% or more of snaps, only twice last year. He was a wide receiver 43 in expected fantasy points per game. Look at that chasm, people. That is the Grand Canyon. Wide receiver 26 in fantasy points per game. Wide receiver 43 in expected fantasy points per game. Unless he becomes a staple in this offense, playing on the outside, getting over a 70-80% route per dropback rate, I think Jayden Reed disappoints this year. All right, now we've made it to the top of the hill, people. The number one player you will regret drafting this fantasy football season, and that is easily Hollywood Brown. Outside of the Kansas City Chiefs luster and the Patrick Mahomes effect, why would you consider drafting Hollywood Brown? Look at what he's done the past few seasons, people. His yards per route run has dropped in each of the last 4 seasons. Injuries were already a worry because they've been a worry his entire career. And now he's already banged up. How can you expect him to stay healthy for the entire season? I don't usually go down the injury road with a lot of players, but with Hollywood, we have a long enough sample size that it is massively concerning. And it's not like he was efficient last year. Amongst 81 qualifying wide receivers, 62nd in yards per route run, 48th in first downs per route run. You have other talented players in this offense. Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco running routes out of the backfield. What if Hollywood is only a situational deep threat? Are you going to be happy when you draft him as your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for your team? And you say, oh, he's in Kansas City, man. It's going to the moon. Sadly, he could be stuck on the launch pad. Might just not fire. I'm avoiding Hollywood Brown this year. All right, everyone. That is the top 10 players you will regret if you draft in fantasy football this year. Before I get up out of here, download the Draft Wizard app. Use it to crush and dominate all of your league mates in your drafts this season as well. Follow those steps. Rewind this video. Get entered to win that signed Joe Burrow helmet. It's immaculate. It's beautiful. Let's get ready. Fantasy football season is here.